And welcome back in. It is the Fantasy Football Forum. This is a solo pod. My co host Grant is off this weekend, as many of you probably are doing your fantasy football drafts for the weekend. And we here at the Fantasy Football Forum wanted to give out one last advice piece for drafting, part of our draft series that we've been doing all August. So, with that in mind, let's begin. Again, tips on what to do for your fantasy football draft. This is not going to be a podcast where I tell you draft these players and win your league, or don't draft these players and you will these players will hurt your team's chances. You, as well as me, are not able to predict the future. So anytime you have videos showing these are league winners, guaranteed league winners, and if they're players that are drafted early on in rounds, well, typically, yes, those are probably players you are targeting. Are there landmines within some of those rounds? Sure, absolutely. But you don't need me on here telling you, go out, draft Ja'Marr Chase. I mean, of course. Why would you not do that? So, this is not that type of video. What we're going to do, give some last minute tips and advice general for league drafts, and then also run through each team's depth charts on positions, where we might find value on a certain team with players as their ADP may have risen or fallen, or also where some sleepers or busts may be. And again, this is all our opinion. You may share that opinion, you may not share that opinion. Either way, this is our opinion, and so we're going to give it to you, and in hopes that it helps you become a better fantasy football player and draft a better team for this upcoming season. So, general draft knowledge. Again, you should know your league rules. If they have changed, you should be aware of any changes. If you have a commissioner in running your league that is not sharing the rule changes with you, that's a bad league. Get out of it. But more specific to the draft, it doesn't matter, in my opinion, where you draft. You may have a favorite particular spot to draft from, but because you should not be approaching the draft, I'm drafting this position, then this position, then this position. Yes, we can have a strategy where my favorite strategy this year is more the hero or RB approach, where you're taking a single running back early, and then you are able to take wide receivers. Now, it doesn't mean take a running back first, so please don't hear what I'm saying and say, oh, I must take a running back first in order to do this draft strategy. No, you can take a wide receiver first, grab a running back if that position falls to you, and then load up on other positions while then taking that position, the running back position, taking another position or another running back rounds later when your league mates are searching for other positions, whereas you are already stockpiled on those positions, mainly the wide receiver and maybe quarterback or tight end. That's my particular strategy this year. Again, every year is a little different. So just because a strategy is very popular and works one year does not mean that next year you should say, well, that worked last year, so therefore I'm going to do it again. So if last year you drafted running back heavy and you're thinking, oh, I need to do running back heavy again, rethink that a little bit. Know what your league mates are going to do. Know what values of ADP are. Wide receivers are being pushed up this year, meaning you want a stud wide receiver, you're going to have to pay the price. But because of that, running back position is reduced. Therefore, you can get a good running back later on. Whereas if you take a solid running back and maybe let's say you go with a robust running back style and you're taking a running back to back, you are then limiting your potential at wide receiver. I understand you're going to have to be weak at a particular position, especially if you play in a super flex league, depending on what type of, unless you're just drafting pure value and pure, I'm going to be balanced and I'm not going to overload on one position early, that's fine. You will then may limit some upside you have, and you may lose out on some value if a position falls to you. So be ready, be flexible. Again, we should have a Bayesian outlook on how we determine what we're going to do. We get new information, we should change based on the information that we're given. That means in draft day, if you get new information based on the draft results on what's happening with your draft live, you should be changing your stance readily. Don't get stuck in one position. Don't get stuck on, I need a certain player. Don't get stuck on those things. Don't be so concrete, because you will then lose value. That's when you lose the draft, is when you lose focus of what you're trying to do as a whole. This is a short, albeit, but this is a long season, and you play the long game. You want to win early, and then you want to build sustainability later. That doesn't all happen draft day. So you're focused on, what am I getting here in the first few weeks? And it's then correlating to, how do I use that to achieve success later on? So one other piece of advice that I have that I've heard, handcuffing is a very popular, I should say, draft strategy. I don't agree with this strategy. And if you're new to the fantasy football world, handcuffing is where you are taking a backup. Typically, a handcuff is with the running back position. So you are taking a starting running back's backup in the chance that the starter then goes down. Now, yes, statistically, and if you play the probability game, a starting running back will potentially get injured. It is one of the most injury prone positions, simply because of the position. So, yes, you're playing probabilities by saying, I'm going to take this player's handcuff and say he's going to have work. The issue I have with drafting handcuffs, and again, this is league size pending. If you're in a short league, you're a 10, 12 team league, and it's short benches, you should not be handcuffing, at least not on draft day. Later on the season, that's fine. But on draft day, you need to focus on, what is my upside? And handcuffing presents a floor, not a ceiling approach look to your building your team. That happens later in the season for handcuffing. Don't focus on it now. There are plenty of players, and we're going to highlight them, where I think they're a good value of a handcuff. But again, we need to focus on upside. We need to pay attention to these players and what's going on. So you need to be looking ahead and be ready to move before your league mates. But that doesn't mean draft them. Okay? So if you play in a league where you say, I need a handcuff, then my suggestion would be that if, let's say, you draft, I'll use Najee Harris. If you decide, I'm going to take the risk with Najee Harris, he is the starter. And whether you want to fight me or, disagree with me if Jaylen Warren is a handcuff or if he is a backup that has standalone value, you can have that position. I'm using it as an example of, if, let's call Jaylen Warren a handcuff, because we could have the debate if he is actually standalone value or not. But anyway, if you draft Najee Harris and you are set on handcuffing, for an upside play, I would not handcuff with Jaylen Warren. And you're going to ask, well, what happens if Najee Harris goes down? Then I'm out a running back because I don't have his backup. That is true. But let's say you handcuff Travis Etienne by drafting Tank Bigsby. What if Najee Harris does not go down with injury? Last year, he played through a Liz Frank injury. What if Travis Etienne gets injured and Najee Harris does not? You've then created an upside play because you have the backup, you have the handcuff to a different team's running back. And now your running back that you drafted late as a handcuff has more value, and your team then has two running backs, not zero. Or one, I guess I would say, or one. We should not be drafting based on a player is or is not going to get injured. We draft knowing the probability that a player will be injured or not be injured, but we should not be drafting thinking we know which players are going to be injured and which ones will not. That is definitely never the case. So, the advice if you're wanting to use handcuff, if you're in a league that handcuffing is actually viable because of the depth of how many players actually go off the waiver or go off on the draft, I would not handcuff your direct backups. I would handcuff with a different team's backup, because then if your running back does not get injured, you have a solid player. But then if the other team's running back does get injured, you also then have a startable player. Again, that may not work out. It is a chance. This is all a chance. This is all a guess. We're all just wondering. And this is where luck plays into fantasy football. And we have to be ready for, there's a luck factor here that we have to account for. We cannot guarantee players will or will not get injured. We're not going to do that. We're not starting down that road. But I would say if you're wanting to draft high upside, it is not drafting your running back's handcuff. So I just wouldn't do it. I don't like drafting handcuffs. I look for them later. So with that being said, we're going to quickly run through each team's depth chart. Not going to focus on every player, but focus on the ones that may or may not have value, or maybe a sleeper, or may have value that we're not willing to pay the draft price for. So, with that being said, we're going to start in the AFC East, and we're just going to go down the list. So, Buffalo Bills, I have no comment on Josh Allen. He is a top-tier quarterback. That's great. If you're going to draft with the strategy of wanting a top-tier quarterback, Josh Allen is definitely a way to go. For running backs, it's James Cook, Damian Harris, and Latavius Murray as the running back. James Cook's value has been rising, and probable. I'm not willing to pay the ADP price now, like I was maybe in early July. And yet this is where, in July, early August, I can say something as far as what is actionable, and it is true. Now, we have new data. The thought may change. Doesn't mean I don't like James Cook this year. I think he could be a sneaky, really good RB2. I'm not necessarily ready to say he's going to be RB1, but may not be willing to pay the price as far as his draft position, because it is starting to go up very much in redraft leagues. Damian Harris, I am not in on. I think he's a bust. He has not proven he's going to be healthy this offseason. He has not made it through a season yet, going back to, or lately, I should say, his days with the Patriots. So I'm out. I would stay away from it. If you're looking for a sleeper, it is actually Latavius Murray, who has had fantastic camp reviews and has shown work in the preseason. So I would pass on Damian Harris. And if you're really wanting a handcuff and the sleeper, it's Latavius Murray. But again, that's just my opinion. The sleeper for pass catchers is actually, I think, and it's not really a sleeper, but Dalton Kincaid could, although he is also the most bust proof or bust potential as well. We've not really seen a lot of rookie tight ends do a whole lot, so that's where I am kind of hesitant, but there's potential upside there. I like Gabe Davis's draft value this year as opposed to last year. This year, you can get Gabe Davis going towards the later middle rounds, where you don't have to pay a high round draft capital for him this year. So last year I was out on Gabe Davis. This year I'm more in because of draft capital. So, on to Miami. If you believe Tua is going to stay healthy, I think he's a great value. He goes later in drafts than a lot of other quarterbacks. Right now, the value in this, and I would consider Miami to be an ambiguous backfield because we don't know who's going to be doing what. Devon Achane is the hot new guy because we all love rookies. We love the new shiny toy, but the value is definitely Jeff Wilson. Raheem Mostert has not stayed healthy for much of his career. But Jeff Wilson, I think he goes the latest in drafts. So you could pick up the starting running back for Miami in close to the end of your draft. He's going to have value. Will he lose work? Potentially. You don't draft thinking they're going to lose work, though. You just draft knowing that for the start of the season, especially if you go hero RB build or a zero RB build, you have a starting running back with stud wide receivers. So, and I'm not out on any of the pass catchers. The tight ends I kind of shy away from just because there's so many options. And you're really only looking at drafting either Tyreek or Jalen Waddle. And again, this all depends on is Tua going to be able to stay healthy. We don't draft thinking they won't, but we do know that there's risk there. For New England, Mac Jones to me is a super flex option. That's a sleeper. He is a quarterback too. So single quarterback leagues, I'm probably not drafting him. For the running backs, it's Ramondre Stevenson, Zeke Elliott, and Pierre Strong, or maybe Ty Montgomery. I think the signing of Zeke hurts the ceiling for Ramondre, but I still see him getting the majority of the work. Yes, he may not get the goal line work, but he wasn't really getting that anyway, especially last year when Harris was healthy. He didn't get the goal line work anyway. So I'm still in on Ramondre, especially if him falling into like the 4th or 5th rounds. Definitely a smash. Tyquan Thornton could be a sleeper for a pass catcher, but it's really going to depend on what this offense is going to do. You don't have to draft him. You can keep an eye on your waiver wire. I like Mike Gesicki as a sleeper tight end. He could be that tight end that nobody's talking about that burst out of the scene. So I'm really out on Juju. He didn't do it last year with the Chiefs, and he didn't get an upgraded team or a situation. The Jets. Aaron Rodgers, I think, is a floor play for a quarterback 1, and it goes to he links back up with Nathaniel Hackett. And when Nathaniel Hackett was the OC in Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers was quarterback in Green Bay, they had the slowest pace of play for an offense. However, doesn't mean there's not value there. I like Garrett Wilson still. I want to see it. I'm not going to push him up. He could have a range of outcome this year as being the wide receiver 1 overall. Definitely could. Very scary floor, though, if things don't look right with what Rodgers likes to do with his offense. For their running back position, also, many will say Ty Conklin is going to be a sleeper tight end. I have said that too, and I have actually changed my opinion. I don't think he's going to be the sleeper tight end. I think if you're punting the tight end position and you're going with Tyler Conklin, I'd like to see it before. There are better options out there than Conklin for a tight end. On the running backs, if you're drafting Breece Hall, I would not draft him earlier than the 7th round. Yes, he has shown signs that he could be ready, but the Jets are also giving us the signs that they don't want to push him early on. So you need to be ready for Hall to not produce a whole lot the front half of the season. Dalvin Cook could be the running back in there that is taking the majority of the work, and it's a shared backfield. And we might be very disappointed with either of them, less with Dalvin Cook if you drafted him late enough with the share that Dalvin Cook gets. Hall still has a potential of late in the season busting out and being that RB1 that we saw him before his injury last year. That is in his range of outcomes. However, you're going to have to wait probably till October, almost November probably, for that to actually happen. At least that's what I'm thinking. So if you're doing this, let your league mates overpay. Don't take him in the 4th or the 3rd round. You need to be willing to wait. And if he falls, then go after him. All right, on to the AFC North, Baltimore. Lamar Jackson's in that 2nd tier for me of quarterbacks. 1st tier being Allen, Mahomes, Hurts. That's my 1st tier, and not necessarily that order. And then Lamar Jackson's in the same tier as Burrow, as Justin Herbert. Those are probably the 2nd tier for me personally. So I would still draft Lamar Jackson. I think this could be a very exciting offense. He has some of the best wide receivers he's had, and we could see an uptick in play. They have a new OC. We're expecting lots of good things from him. I like J.K. Dobbins' value. I've made a bold call that Cam Akers is this year's Josh Jacobs, where you're drafting a running back late, and he has the potential of being that RB1. J.K. Dobbins also fits that bill where he could have a RB1 type season. This could be that offense. We've seen it before. So I'm in on Dobbins, especially you want to push running back down a little bit. There's a good running back to target in the middle rounds or depending on how much he may fall. Out of the wide receivers, I would either draft Rashad Bateman or Zay Flowers. Those are the two I would take my shot on. Either of them, I think, have the opportunity and the ability to lead this team behind Mark Andrews in targets. I'm not sure about Odell Beckham. I could be proven wrong, but I don't think Odell Beckham's going to beat your teams this year. So, for Cincinnati, Joe Mixon is now up to a point where he's not a value as much anymore. Yes, he's avoided off-field issues. There's still things that are coming. So, depending on how much he falls, I may draft him. I'm not saying avoid him, but he's not a value like he was in the early parts of draft season. I'm not as high on T. Higgins. If I'm taking a wide receiver 2, first, I want to make sure most of the wide receiver 1s that I would like to target in that range are gone. Yes, T. Higgins has the ability to be a wide receiver 1, but it's also very limited. So I would draft guys like DK Metcalf over T. Higgins. And typically that doesn't happen. Higgins has gone earlier than Metcalf. And I don't think that's the right strategy to deploy when you're drafting. I'm out on their tight ends. I think Irv Smith is just going to be a disappointment for you this year. So if you're looking to punt tight end, not Irv Smith. He's not your answer. He's a what we want. For the Steelers, I'm in on this offense getting better. Kenny Pickett looks to have that ability to take the step from his rookie year. They have a better offensive line. They have playmakers. They brought in Allen Robinson. Yes, Allen Robinson is not what he was. They brought in guys that can help. Najee Harris, I feel like in this backfield, he is the workhorse. I think Jaylen Warren is a handcuff only. Many will disagree with me on that, though. Jaylen Warren, too many, has standalone value because Najee Harris, he is in their mind, a better running back than Najee. Najee, though, is that guy. He's the guy that plays every game, injured or not. He played with the Liz Frank injury last year, and Jaylen Warren looked better. I'll give them that. But I think the only thing that we're discounting Najee is he doesn't have Big Ben throwing him dump-off passes every other play. He still has that ability. I'm in on Deontay Johnson. I'm also in on George Pickens at his draft position. Deontay Johnson's draft capital is not as much as it should be for your fantasy leagues. You should have to draft him in round 4 or 5 to me. You can draft him round 6, 7, maybe 8 if he falls. Pat Freiermuth, if you'd miss out on the big tier and you want to push it, he's a late round. You can get him around 9 target for tight ends. I think he's going to have a really good season. Cleveland, we have high hopes for Cleveland. We want Deshaun Watson to return to the form. I don't think he's going to return to the top 5 form that he was when he was in Houston, but he still could have a quarterback 1 numbers. They want to throw the ball more in Houston. I think they're still going to be very balanced as far as running and rush attempts and pass attempts. They may lean more with the pass attempts than rush, but Nick Chubb looks to be one of the running backs that could lead the league in rush share and rush yards. I'm out on Amari Cooper. Couple stats from last year that are interesting. When Deshaun Watson was under center, Donovan Peoples-Jones nearly matched Amari Cooper with stat lines, receptions, yards, everything. So you can get Amari Cooper later and by later I mean 4th round potentially, I'd rather either take a chance on Elijah Moore, but Donovan Peoples-Jones is going to be a waiver wire addition at some point in time this season. I'm going to call that out right now. So be aware, I'm not really high on Amari Cooper, which then means I'm not as high on the Browns as far as like what they're going to do. I think they're going to be a very balanced offense, and they could do very well. We have to be ready for what if we're wrong with this team. I am a fan of David Njoku. You can get him even later than Pat Freiermuth. So, but he could have top 10 tight end in his range of outcomes for finishing. Houston Texans. You're only drafting CJ Stroud if you are in a Superflex league and you have pushed the quarterback position, and he should be a quarterback 2, no more than that for you this year. I think this team has the potential to do well, but I also think they're going to struggle as well. I'm in on Dameon Pierce. He showed us last year he can handle it. Yes, they brought in Devin Singletary, and that can hurt some of the upside, but Dameon Pierce showed the Texans what he needed to last year. As far as wide receivers, I'm betting on John Mechie. I think Nico Collins has yet to show us that he's that guy. He's not broken out yet. They have Robert Woods, but I'm not trusting to an old, aging wide receiver. I'm going to take the wide receiver that also had very high draft capital for the NFL for the Texans. And the only reason he didn't play was he had cancer. And this type of cancer that he had has been beaten by other NFL players, and they have had good seasons after that. I'm taking a shot on John Mechie if I have a deep enough draft. On the Colts. So, can't not talk about the Colts without addressing the Jonathan Taylor issue. Yes, this is before we know if they have met the Tuesday deadline and Jonathan Taylor will be traded or not. But, all being said, if I had to guess what is going to happen in this situation, and again, this is a guess, not facts, my own take, I think he plays for the Colts. The Colts need him more than they're going to let on to the media. And I don't think Jonathan Taylor sits out. We've seen what happens to running backs that sit out, Le'Veon Bell, and then have come back to a different team. I think Jonathan Taylor wants to prove a point, and the point is not going to be done by sitting out. So I think he plays, and I think he will play for the Colts. Now, that being said, don't overpay for him because that's speculation. So you're entering drafts. What do I do with Jonathan Taylor? Do you draft him? If he falls late enough, you did a hero RB build, and yet Jonathan Taylor is falling to you in the 4th, 5th rounds, I potentially pivot and take him, still with that hero RB build, knowing you may have selected a player that will not play. I think it's a low shot opportunity, like a low chance that happens, though. For quarterback, they've come out and said it's Anthony Richardson. So, I think Anthony Richardson in a Superflex league is stay away. Don't draft him. You let your league mates do that. I think it's a very risky thing, risky strategy to have. Don't stack with Jonathan Taylor either. That's a bad move. I like Michael Pittman. He is not steamed up like he was last year, so I like him. And if you want to take a shot on tight ends, it's Jelani Woods for me with this team. The Jaguars. So I differ from a lot in what videos I've seen out there. I think Travis Etienne has a possibility to be a RB1 this year. Tank Bigsby is a name that people love talking about. They love showing, oh, it's Tank Bigsby this, oh, it's Tank Bigsby that. Okay. Here's one stat that you may not have known. Yes, he has pass catching ability. Yes, he is very good in the run game. However, Tank Bigsby in college, this is at Auburn, so this isn't some little school where it's like, well, they just, didn't do well. At Auburn, Tank Bigsby tied one other player in college football for tackles behind the line of scrimmage at a 53% rate. That other player is Deuce Vaughn. Now, I'm not saying that Tank Bigsby is going to be a bust, but what I hear, not necessarily from beat reporters, but I think a little bit, is that Tank Bigsby, he's going to be using the goal line. We don't know that. We can't know that. We hear, well, Travis Etienne doesn't do very well. Okay, we have one season off of Liz Frank. Okay, a player can get better. I'm betting on Travis Etienne. I think he's going to get better. I think we're going to show it. He has that home run hitting running ability. He can catch the ball. Look at his college tape. Tank Bigsby's not auto here. So I am fine drafting Travis Etienne 3rd, 4th rounds. Go for it. I think he should go there. He has top 10 RB potential. That is a bold call. I'm going to stick with it. I'm avoiding Calvin Ridley. I don't think he's going to beat your team. I'd rather draft Christian Kirk for value a few rounds later. Again, this is not a super in-depth on every single player. These are highlights. I don't need to talk about every single player. On the Titans, if you think Derrick Henry is going to stay healthy all year and be a Titan all year, draft him. I have said it before. This is year 7. Running backs entering year 7 start to decline in their production. I love the ability of Tyjae Spears. I think he is a good handcuff. That doesn't mean draft him, but be ready for him. Be ready before your teammates are ready for him. As far as wide receivers and pass catchers, it is DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, I think it's a fair value. I wouldn't overpay for him, but I think it's a fair value. I think it's also, if you've drafted and you have some risky players that you need some safety, I think he's more of a safety play. He's not that wide receiver that's going to be wide receiver 1 overall, but he has wide receiver 2 in him. So you don't necessarily want to take him as your wide receiver 1. I think Okonkwo is going to be fine. Wide receiver targets and tight end targets to me are different. So I think Okonkwo will still have his targets regardless of DeAndre Hopkins being there. And we hope and pray that Treylon Burks gets healthy and is able to be back on the field. All right, on to the West. We're going to start with Denver. Right now, Javonte Williams is not priced correctly. He goes in the 6th, 7th. I've seen him 8th, 9th rounds. That is way too late. Now, by the time you're hearing this, you may say, well, yeah, he went in the 4th round for my draft. I'm in on Javonte Williams, where I'm not necessarily in on Breece Hall because I can get him later. And yes, he may start slow, like Breece Hall, but I don't have to take him as my RB1 or 2. I can take it as my RB3 or 4. So I built in that safety there. And he compares well to players like J.K. Dobbins. I think Denver does take a step forward. I don't know how much forward, but I do think they take a step forward. I'm in on Russell Wilson. I think he's going to be a fantastic value for where you're having to draft him. I think we've overreacted to what happened last year, where now that has changed. It may not be the Russell Wilson that we've seen in Seattle years ago, but I think it's something that's going to be close to that. I'm actually on a sleeper wide receiver here, Marvin Mims. Jerry Jeudy went down with a hamstring injury in practice this week. I think Marvin Mims comes in and will take the job from either Courtland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy. I think he's a better talent. I see Marvin Mims being that sleeper wide receiver that you want in fantasy for this team. Kansas City. There's a lot to talk about with Kansas City. I'm not in on McKinnon this year. I understand he had a fantastic end of the year last year. Don't disagree with that. But year 7 running back. Again, and McKinnon has a history of being injured. I think Pacheco takes a step forward and does more. But that leaves Clyde Edwards-Helaire being in that McKinnon potential role, and I wouldn't draft CEH very high. I'm out on Kadarius Toney. Injured. He started injured. You're not going to get a full season out of him. So you're going to draft him and let him sit on your IR spot for over half the season. However, yes, if you want to draft Travis Kelce, I don't love his ADP. Last year, we could draft Travis Kelce in the round 3 and 4. This year, I have to pay round 1, 2. Typically, he doesn't make out of the first round. That's a hard draft build. I don't like taking tight ends in the first round. Personal preference. If there's a wide receiver I'm on, it's Sky Moore. He goes off the latest in most drafts. However, if you have a deep draft or you want to pay attention to a sleeper, it's Richie James. 1, he is the lead punt returner. 2, last year with the Giants, he flashed really well. Yeah, I think in one of the videos in the summer, I listed stats of what he did and other players that were around him, and it was a very good group of players. I don't have that with me, but I am on Richie James as a sleeper, not on Toney this year. Stay away from him. Raiders. So I think we are too low on Davante Adams. Yes, he still goes in the second round, but he is still a top-tier wide receiver. Yes, Jimmy Garoppolo has a history of not being healthy, but their backup, not Brian Hoyer, because I think they may try the backup, the rookie that they drafted, Aiden O'Connell, out of Northwestern. He is ready. He is a sneaky, ready quarterback. So for Superflex leagues, if Jimmy Garoppolo goes hurt, be ready to go grab Aiden O'Connell. I think we are too low on Davante Adams. I would put him after. I mean, I am more in, and we'll get to this player later, but I'm more in on Amon-Ra St. Brown being a top potential, 5-6 wide receiver in the league. Adams still is top 10. And if we're pushing him that below that, we have issues then. I'm not drafting Michael Mayer. I'm also not drafting Austin Hooper. Josh Jacobs, now if ADP value is not shifted, looks like he's signing. So there's opportunity to take advantage of that. The caution with Josh Jacobs is players that come off a career high in touches tend to get hurt more often in the following year. So just be aware of that. On to the Chargers. I think they have an excellent year. They brought in a new offensive coordinator. I think we saw the floor of Justin Herbert last year. I think we're going to see the ceiling of Justin Herbert this year. I am not in on Quentin Johnson. I want to see it, and I've laid that video out before, so go find it in an earlier video when we were looking at the offseason moves. But Quentin Johnson, I think, gets outscored by Josh Palmer this year. Gerald Everett, if you really are punting tight end, you can take him late or maybe get him off the waiver wire if you absolutely need to. I like Mike Williams more than Keenan Allen simply because of draft price. You can get Mike Williams about 3 or 4 rounds later than Keenan Allen. And Mike Williams has been playing a lot of the slot role. I think that's a very exciting role. I think that's the CeeDee Lamb type role that Kellen Moore's used with the Cowboys last year. And on to the NFC, the East and the Cowboys. I think we're too low on the Cowboys. Dak Prescott is going to have a great year, I think. We love Tony Pollard. You're obviously drafting CeeDee Lamb. The player that's being overlooked is Brandon Cooks. He's the same age as Calvin Ridley. He seems a lot older, but he's the same age as Calvin Ridley. I think we're sleeping too much on him. And if you want a free tight end, it's Jake Ferguson here. Nobody's paying attention to the tight end position in Dallas since Dalton Schultz left last year. The Giants, Saquon Barkley should be the running back 1, not Christian McCaffrey, not Austin Eckler. Should be Saquon, then CMC or Eckler, depending on how you want to divvy it up. I think this team can take a step forward and may look, if they're able to take a step forward, that means they're playing the Eagles and the Cowboys a lot closer and potentially winning one of those games. That is a very good possibility, in my opinion. The wide receiver I actually love here is Paris Campbell. I think he's going to be a good slot receiver for Daniel Jones. And everybody's in on Darren Waller. So if I tell you, yeah, I'm in on Darren Waller, go get Darren Waller, I sound like just like everybody else. But yes, Darren Waller, if he's healthy, he could be a top 3 tight end this year. And for the Eagles, yes, we're in on Jalen Hurts, but this is a ambiguous backfield, and I don't think it actually is. The guy that's being drafted the latest or not being drafted at all is the lead running back. It's Kenneth Gainwell. You really want to punt running back? Go get Kenneth Gainwell late in your draft. And when everybody's scrambling, like, oh, why isn't Swift doing more? Why isn't Rashad Penny? We haven't seen Rashad Penny play a full season ever. Kenneth Gainwell is the one that's being touted. It's already been said by coaches. Go look up the clips. Kenneth Gainwell is the lead back. We should be drafting him higher. Why are we not? I don't have any new information on the wide receivers. I like both of them at cost. I think Smith, Devonta Smith is probably the best out of the tier of the Higgins and Waddle and the wide receiver twos. I think Smith has the biggest upside. For the Commanders, Terry McLaurin did get hurt. It was a toe injury. Don't have new information. We're going to see what Bieniemy does. Does Sam Howell take a step forward? This could be a similar situation like we've seen in Pittsburgh, where does this team take a step forward? A lot of people say yes. I think that they can. How much they take a step forward, that's yet to be determined. But if it's going to happen, that means Jahan Dotson's a value as a breakout candidate in a year 2 breakout candidate. And I'd rather have Antonio Gibson versus Brian Robinson. Detroit. Last year, nobody was on Detroit. Oh, wait, I was. Yep. And I've got the tapes to prove that. I was on them. I think they're going to be fantastic again. They're a top 5 scoring team. With Jameson Williams being suspended for 6 games, they brought in Marvin Jones and Josh Reynolds. But I think this team is going to feed Amon-Ra St. Brown. He could have 170 targets this year. That's a lot of targets. He has proven that he is that guy. And if Jameson Williams can't stay on the field, whether it's because he's picking fights, whether it's because whatever off the field things that he has going on that are more important than playing football, that's going to be problematic. That does open up then more opportunity for Jahmyr Gibbs, who I like at value. I understand it's a high price guy, but I like at value. I'm not going to assume David Montgomery gets 31 rush attempts from the end zone. We're not assuming that. I like his value. I still think he's a good RB2. I'm not betting on the Jamal Williams role from last year. Also, yes, I understand it's a rookie tight end, and I just harped on Dalton Kincaid as a rookie tight end, but this is a different offensive situation. I think Sam Laporta, especially with the consolidation of targets, has opportunity to do well in this offense this year. The Bears. Does Justin Fields take the Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, that type of step forward? I think he can. This was one of the best passers, not rushers, passers in college football when Fields was at Ohio State. Chicago did what they needed to bring in more weapons. DJ Moore brought DJ Moore in. They drafted Roschon Johnson, one of the best pass blockers for a running back in this draft. I think Khalil Herbert loses his job by week 5 or 6, and Roschon Johnson's going to be the guy. So you're not necessarily drafting a handcuff again, but you have to be on the lookout. I'm going to call Roschon Johnson is going to lead this backfield by the end of the season. I'm out on their tight ends too, so just more FYI. We all think in Green Bay everything's doom, gloom, dismal. I don't think it's quite that bad. Jordan Love has to prove what he can do. I think he knows who he is. I think he knows he's not a top 10 talent, but can he be a Kirk Cousins level? that will lead this offense to have some success. They won't be necessarily the worst team. I'm in on Christian Watson. I think it's a huge upside play. I understand he's going to see regression from last year, but you can still have very good value and a lot of upside play while facing regression. I think we've taken a little bit too far. And if you're going to take a chance on a rookie tight end, the best one, in my opinion, sounds like you're going to go to a country western concert. I'm going to Luke Musgrave. There's a consolidation of targets. It's going to go Watson, Jones, Musgrave, maybe then Romeo Doubs, but I think Jayden Reed outplays Romeo Doubs. The Vikings. This is an odd thing where I think the Vikings as a team can play better, and they may have a worse record because of it. They were very lucky last year. I'm out on Madison. He is a favorite dead zone, quote unquote, dead zone running back for people. Not my dead zone running back. I think Alexander Madison, he could not get Dalvin Cook off the field. He is not the same type of runner that Dalvin Cook was. I think Alexander Madison is going to have his time split early on with Ty Chandler, and Ty Chandler is going to overtake that backfield. I'm in on Ty Chandler. You want to draft a handcuff? It's Ty Chandler. That's the one I'm doing. I think Addison, if we want to then talk about pass catchers, Addison has potential to have 100 targets. But I think Hockenson gets looked at more in the red zone for the Adam Thielen vacated targets and red zone looks. In Tampa Bay, Rachaad White's one of my favorite RBs to target in the dead zone. I think he also has the Josh Jacobs-esque of being able to be a fringe top 10 running back being drafted late this year. For a pass catcher, I'm going to draft Chris Godwin, not Mike Evans. I think Chris Godwin molds better with what Baker Mayfield does for this team. And if I really want to punt tight end, I'm going to take Cade Otton. By the way, if you're really punting tight end, you're going to be waking up every single week knowing which one am I going to find? And am I going to get one catch for 10 yards? Or is it going to be 4 for 30 and 2 touchdowns? Potential. So just be aware that's what you're signing up for. It's fine. You can stream tight ends. It's a viable option to do. But understand until you find that value, you might be rotating tight ends very quickly. Carolina, very not fun team to talk about. DJ Chark is injured currently. Adam Thielen is also injured. Terrace Marshall also was injured during training camp. If I'm taking a shot on a wide receiver, it's actually going to be Terrace Marshall. As a running back, I'm actually going to draft Chuba Hubbard, not Miles Sanders. I don't like Bryce Young. I think if you're drafting him, especially in a single quarterback league, you're trying to bet that he's going to be the next Drew Brees. I'm not taking that bet. I'm not going to take a bet that a quarterback is going to be an outlier of a player right away. However, if I'm punting tight end, I actually really like Hayden Hurst, especially with the wide receivers going down so fast. I think Hayden Hurst has opportunity there. He's not being talked about at all. So he's basically free. You don't even have to draft him. On New Orleans, Alvin Kamara is still being drafted too late, and I understand there's a 3-game suspension, but there's still the upside play with Kamara. I think we'll see really fast if Michael Thomas is back. If he is, I think it's going to be 70%, not of 70% of what we saw Michael Thomas as peak, 70% of what we saw him last year. I'm not comfortable drafting him. I'll just say it. I don't like drafting him. So, and we'll see if Carr is able to get right from last year. New situation, may just need to be there. Atlanta, I'm not drafting Bijan. Too many guys that I like either later or before him. I'm going to let a league mate draft him. And I think Bijan could be a RB2. That's a bold call too. And I don't think it should be a bold call, but that's a bold call. I'm if I'm going to draft an Atlanta pass catcher, it's either Drake London or Kyle Pitts, not both. I see the potential with both. Again, it's a question of, does Desmond Ridder take the step up that he needs to? Can this team do that? This team, I think, is more of a football build, not a fantasy build, and they could win the NFC South. Very well possible. So, Arizona, there's really not a whole lot to talk about. I'm avoiding James Conner. I'd rather take the shot on guys like Rachaad White, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, Dameon Pierce, the younger guys. Most of them at better offensive situations. Yes, we can debate if a offense situation is better or not, but I'm also not drafting Marquise Brown. Kyler Murray may or may not play at all this year. I'm not taking Marquise Brown, who I like to watch. I'm not taking a whole lot of Arizona guys, let's just be honest. Michael Wilson's the name of wide receiver to watch. He could be the guy that we start seeing break out. That may be a next year play, but Michael Wilson is the name to keep on your radar on waiver wires. On the Rams, this defense could be really bad. I'm fine still drafting Cooper Kupp in the first round. Yes, he was injured, but he even said it when he got injured. Had they needed him to play, he would have played. The biggest thing with Cooper Kupp is, can Matthew Stafford stay healthy behind that O-line? We just don't know. We don't assume he won't. We just have to be aware of the risk that he may not. The tight end I really love that you can get late in your drafts, but I think has top 10 playability, Tyler Higbee. He is, in my opinion, the second target on this team. It's not Van Jefferson. It's not Tutu Atwell. It's not Ben Skowronek. It's not Puka Nacua. Not Pharaoh Brown. Puka Nacua. Tyler Higbee is the second option in this game, in this past game. And we're missing him. There are a lot of people missing him. San Fran. Brock Purdy was named the starter. We'll see if he's ready for week 1. But the backup was already named. It was not Trey Lance. So Christian McCaffrey is fine in the first round. He is in year 6 of being a running back in the league. And he's going to get less touches because that's how Shanahan wants to use him. That's actually probably good for him because he gets to play more. If I'm taking a handcuff here, it's not Elijah Mitchell. It's Jordan Mason. Watch out for Jordan Mason being that handcuff that if both Mitchell and McCaffrey get injured, Mitchell's high probability to get injured. McCaffrey, we'll see. But Mason then could work in there. I like Brandon Ayuk as draft position better than Debo, but I understand liking Debo in that 4th, 5th round. I think if I'm facing a decision at the tight end, though, I'm not going to take Kittle. I take Waller. If I don't get Waller and I have Kittle staring me there, I'm going to wait and take a Freiermuth or a Goddard later, though. So I'm not out on Kittle. I think I'd rather find value later or take a different. I'm in more on other tight ends of that position. I think Geno Smith has the opportunity to, while he may regress a little from last year, I think he still stays around the same. I don't think he goes back to his norm. I think this is a good offense for him to do that. I'm in on Kenneth Walker. I understand Zach Charbonnet was drafted high. Kenneth Walker has that home run hitting ability. You've got to be ready for him to be able to just take an ADR to the house week in, week out. Yeah, it's a risk. It's a boom-bust potential, but I think it's more boom than bust. Tyler Lockett, again, being slept on. Especially with the injury to JSN. The wrist injury, he may not be back right away. I know they're saying week 1. We're all optimistic about it. Yes, JSN eventually may lead this team. He's probably one of the best route runners and wide receivers that this team has. He has to get healthy. He has to get acclimated. Tyler Lockett's being slept on again. All right. There quickly is the full rundown of all 32 teams. So, best of luck to all your drafts. Again, find us on YouTube. We're on Spotify. Give us a like. Give us a thumbs up. Send us a comment. And may your draft go as well as you want. May your league mates not do as well as you want. And your team have the fantasy gods in your corner. Best of luck to drafts this season. And hit us up for any questions. We'll see you next time.